a two-state solution.
And just another to recap for you back home this time. As we covered in our conversation with Jim Chalmers earlier and with David Littleproud, the Commonwealth Bank has hit pause on a plan announced only yesterday to switch customers from what's called a complete access account to the more popular smart access account, and then to charge them $3 for in-person cash withdrawals. It hasn't necessarily ruled out further changes, and it doesn't link this pause to public or political pressure that was applied on it either. But the Commonwealth's head of retail banking, Angus Sullivan, puts this temporary change of heart down to a communications error.
Yeah, clearly we've done a poor job of communicating aspects of this change for our customers. What we're going to be doing on the back of this is pausing the changes that we announced for complete access.
OK, we now want to introduce our political panel this Wednesday, or to clarify, it's really one half of it. Labor MP Louise Miller-Frost is in Adelaide and is making her way to our studios, we understand. Hopefully Louise joins us very, very shortly. In the meantime, the other half is Independent MP Dai Le, and Dai is back with us from Sydney. Why don't we push on between ourselves, Dai? It's great to see you again. Weak growth. Under 1%, we discover today, and government spending is doing all the work to keep it positive at present. Can that be sustained? Can we keep some of these government spends going when we're running deep deficits over the next 4 years, starting with $28 billion in the current financial year at least?
I'm no economist, first of all, Greg, but I think that government spending, as we know, have really pushed up inflation. And for me, I've had, roundtables discussion with small to medium-sized businesses in my local community, who have expressed that they're hurting in terms of the increase in electricity bills for businesses, freight. One business said to me that freight used to cost them $5,000, I think, from Sydney to Western Australia. Now it's $50,000. So the cost of insurance as well, the cost of rent has gone up, and of course the increase in salaries, wages is really good for people who are working in factories and in those places. But it also means it costs increase in terms of the overall running of a business. And of course, that will flow the supply chain. It will flow onto the end consumers for people who purchase products such as, meat and all of that stuff. So I think that, people are still hurting. And the question is, are people better off today than they were 3 years ago? And I think if you ask that of a lot of people, and I've gone to, been door knocking, as you know, Craig, and people are still saying to me that they're feeling they're in pain. They're hurting a lot financially, especially I can't emphasize enough, families in Western Sydney and in particular Fowler, where we've got a high percentage of low income families living out here. Well, that's going to be the defining question of the next election campaign, isn't it? I'm pleased to report, Dai Le, that Louise Miller-Frost has breezed into the studio looking fresh as a daisy. Thanks for the dash, Louise. We really appreciate you making it here in double quick time today. So we were just discussing, Louise, the weak growth figure under 1%, and noting that government spending is responsible for keeping it positive. Dai gave us the update on the ground where she is in Western Sydney. Is the same question, though, which you wouldn't have heard me put to her, is this sustainable for government to keep pumping air in those tyres?
Oh, look, I think this represents the soft landing that we're really trying to work for. If you look at the OECD, 3/4 of economies around the world dealing with this inflation problem, which is a global problem, have had a negative quarter. So we have not had a negative quarter. The Treasurer has been working really hard to make sure that we have that soft landing. Yes, certainly growth is weak, but that's actually what the Reserve Bank is trying to do by raising interest rates, is to actually dampen down the economy. Hopefully this will be enough to demonstrate that, we've got very strong unemployment rates, so less than 4%. We have over 1 million jobs that have been created, and we have interest rates down in the right area. hopefully this will be enough to get us across the line for an interest rate cut.
Yeah, it certainly sets the scene, as I observed earlier. Di, you look like you want to come back in there.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I yes, appreciate the million, jobs created, but I think that's predominantly my understanding is in the health service sector, which is really welcomed. But I think Australia's productivity overall, in terms of being a very productive and innovative and country that we used to be, it's I feel like there's a lag with a lot of the policies that the government have introduced. Introduced things such as you can disconnect. I mean, the ability to disconnect from work. What does that mean for the workforce and for society? I understand it for people in factories can't disconnect. People who are on the front line working as nurses and teachers can't disconnect. So I don't know that kind of policies who the government was aiming at. But I think our productivity is really slow. And I emphasise again, on the ground here in Western Sydney, in communities like Fowler, families are hurting, businesses are hurting, and small businesses are hanging on the thin thread of surviving through the increase in, as I mentioned before,
the cost that Di outlined. Yes, Louise.
And look, I think we absolutely recognise that things are very tough on the ground, and that's why we've put so many different cost of living measures into the economy to try and keep things going to help people who are doing it tough. I'd note that the opposition has voted against every single one of those measures. So imagine what it would be like if those weren't in the economy. Yeah. The productivity is doing well. We are limited very much by our skilled labour. Before the election, when I was campaigning, and now still, I hear from many, ear thing dropping out, many sectors that they are contained by the amount of skilled labour that they can get. They can't actually grow because they need more tradies, they need more health workers, they need more retailers, they need more engineers, they need everything. Yeah. And I think the growth in jobs has been absolutely across the sector. It hasn't just been health workers by any means. That's where we need more people.
Public sector is a big part of it,
I think that's about 3%.
Okay. All right. Look, since Di introduced the concept of, I suppose, industrial policy around here, we had this Woolworths warehouse dispute down in Victoria, but it's spilling over into New South Wales. They're back at Fair Work, the United Workers Union, and Woolies. Louise, maybe not as big an issue where you are, but groceries running out, that would be an intolerable situation, wouldn't it, in public policy?
Oh, look, it takes you back to the pandemic, really, doesn't it? It is quite terrifying to see those empty shelves. Look, the supermarket inquiries that we've been running have been very much about ensuring that supermarkets are doing the right thing by shoppers and doing the right thing by farmers. But it's also really important that they do the right thing by their workers. And the sorts of productivity measures that they're putting in place that monitor your every minute, your every second of activity and require you to have that constant productivity is almost quite scary. We don't want that type of, the Amazon warehouse type of issue that we see in the United States, where they have lots of work injuries because there is absolutely no downtime. There's that constant pressure to keep moving all the time, lots of turnover, lots of burnout. That's not what we want for Australian workplaces. We want good, well-paid, safe workplaces for our workers.
All right, how do you see this one, Di? I mean, it's quite possible that your part of Sydney is affected.
Oh, look, can I say, I mean, first of all, I'm thinking every time a Labor government is in, we see so many strikes. It's unbelievable.
That's absolutely incorrect, Di.
I think
the strike rate has been significantly lower since we've been in.
I keep on hearing it, though, Louise. We've heard lots of strikes taken by unions. So,
no, that's not correct.
In terms of I think this whole issue, I think our shelves, I mean, look, Christmas is just around the corner. I really ask Woolworths and the unions to really sit down and actually come to some kind of compromise or negotiation, because it's impacting families going to the shelves, and already, people are already struggling in Western Sydney. So I just really make a plea to Woolworths and make a plea to the unions to really sit down, because it's not going to benefit workers, because by going on strike, people aren't going to work, they aren't earning an income, and then there's no food on the shelves and products on the shelves for families. So think about the unintended consequences again of how it impacts the public and the people in our community.
Yeah, I think some of Louise's colleagues have made that point today, trying to get both parties into the commission. Look, I don't want time to run out without sort of moving on to a more reflective and sombre topic of conversation. You'd both be aware, certainly Louise would, we're reminded it is the 1-year anniversary of the death of former Labor MP for Dunkley, Peter Murphy. Louise, of course, worked with Peter on the Social Affairs Committee. Victoria's Labor gambling minister has commemorated that today and kind of regretfully observed that there has been no action, no full response anyway, on many of those recommendations, Louise. Does that minister, Melissa Horne, have a point? Do you agree with her?
So, look, I'll start by saying it is a very sad day. Peter was a wonderful person. As a new MP coming in, she was very welcoming, supportive. She was a fantastic example, her commitment to her local community, but also to the broader political issues and the platform. In terms of the report you're referring to, which obviously I was a part of and signed off on, yes, we have 31 different recommendations in front of us, and it's unfair to say that nothing has happened. We have BetStop, which has had over 26,000 people sign up already. Now, BetStop addressed a problem that we heard from many of the people who identify as gambling addicts, that in terms of being able to exclude themselves from gambling sites, they had to keep finding them and blocking themselves, and then another one would pop up and they had to find that and block that one, and then another one. Whoops, ear thing again, I'm afraid.
Sure, yeah. It's the advertising part though, isn't it? I might just let Louise is wrestling with that. So, Dai, I'll throw it over to you. Where do you stand? Do you think the government's kind of dragging the chain on the advertising aspect of it?
Look, I think, can I speak in terms of the gambling problem in Fowler? And as I think you probably know, and most of your audience will be aware, that we've got one of the highest gambling problems, I think, in the Southern Hemisphere here in Fowler with many of our major clubs here. So I think that we need to tackle the roots of problem gambling, first of all. Advertising in terms of gambling, I think if it does appears and pop up in children's program, absolutely, government has to do something and have the courage to intervene and do something about that. But I think we need to tackle the roots of the gambling problem. Right. And the advertising is a small piece of that whole bigger problem that my community experienced. Yeah,
I understand that. Look, time is marching on for us today. I'm going to have to wrap it up there. Thanking you, Louise, in the first instance, for your many battles today to make it, and then the old earpiece. We've all had that before. Dai Le, thanks to you. And together, the program thanks you for your regular appearances. It's been a great combination. I wish we had more time today, but that's where we find ourselves. I hope you get a break. And
thank you.
That we
Merry Christmas
see
to
you
your audience and everybody there as well.
Yes, Merry Christmas.
All the